In this video, I'm going to start out by creating the laser that my rocket ship shoots at my invading robots. So as I go to sprites, I'm going to click paint a sprite. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create, now I'm going to create something that's a little bit more of a complex or creative shape. You do not have to necessarily get this complex. An elongated rectangle, even just a circle could kind of do the job. I'm going more with the theme of the game and shooting the laser beam there. So that's where I'm going to try to make something a little bit more interesting. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start with my line tool. I am going to turn the color to red. Okay, I call it all the way up red, hundreds all across. I'm also going to increase the size of this to about 3 pixels. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw a very short little line across the center. And then the nice part is it does help me kind of line things up. So I am going to start from there and go down, start from that end point and go down as well. This does not need to be very large, and I should see it. Yeah, it's kind of overlapping my robot. I'm going to actually change the size on it in a few minutes, but I don't need to right now. I'm going to change to fill. I'm going to go to all hundreds red again, and I'm going to fill in that area. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my circle tool, leaving these set the way they are. I'm going to draw a circle, and I'm going to draw it about the size. I know I need to move it. But I'm going to try to I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. I'm going to make the circle so that it basically fills the top. So you've got almost this kind of upside down teardrop, meteor looking shape that I'm going to use for my laser. Now, as you can see, it's a little big. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a couple of things. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to group it. Group it makes it kind of all one thing. I'm going to zoom in a little bit again, and I'm going to go ahead and reduce the size, shrinking it to be the size that I want it, the finished size in the game. That's a pretty good size for my little laser blast. I'm also going to move it away from the center, and then I'm going to move it so that the center of the circle is at the center mark. So that's where it's going to be kind of judging the location of the laser is by this center. The reason I'm going to do that is as I make it disappear up into the screen, that's kind of what it's going to be measured by, is that center point. So there we go. That creates my laser. Now, this we're going to code, and this is the coding for any other missile type thing that you create in Scratch. And that is we need to use a concept called cloning. Now, just so we're clear, the events and code for creating clones, or basically copies of a sprite, are down here. So we will use those. So we will use actually all 3 of these. I can grab them all right now, create a clone of myself, start as a clone, and delete the clone. We'll code all 3 of those. Now, just to make things easier in the future, I should have named my sprite before. I'm going to name it right now as laser. I'm going to name it again and spell it right with the E this time. And now I'm going to start on my cloning, or start on my creation. So first off, when I start as a clone, I am going to need to show. One of the reasons we do this is as you can see, the laser exists right now, right here. And I don't want that to exist, the mama copy, if you want to think about it that way. So when we actually start the game, I'm going to have the mama copy hide. And then we show as a clone when we create the clone. And that's where we will mess with this as well. Now, when the clone gets created, we want it to do a few things. The first thing we want it to do, and I'm actually going to sneak it in right here above that, is we want it to go to the rocket ship. So it looks like it's coming from the rocket ship. Okay, we want it to show up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use a if or a repeat until clone. And so when we go to sensing, we're going to grab the touching one, and we're going to repeat until it's touching the edge. This is just a simple way. In other tutorials, I know we've figured out what the Y position would be as it touches the very upper part of it, but just by having it touch edge, that should have it work. It also prevents you from bringing your rocket ship way over and trying to shoot and send your lasers up the edge. So it would cause that to go away. So repeat until touching edge. The end part is delete the clone because we want to repeat this until it goes all the way up. So my motion is going to change Y by, and I'm going to leave it at 10 just so that we can see and make sure that motion is right. Now, just to make this really simple, I'm going to use when the space key is pressed to create the clone, just so I can make sure everything else works. So it's hidden right now. You can see my rocket ship moves. When I push the space bar, nothing happens. Cool. Go to rocket ship show. All right. Let's see where the problem is. So if you come across this, here's some things you can do. First off, we can see if this is causing our problem. Take that off. Take this off. Might be causing our problem. So you can see it kind of blasts out. By the way, we will work on this, but there are ways if we kind of overload things to basically create too many clones. And that's what's happening is now these clones are all kind of way up here. So let's go ahead and we're going to add a few things. And let's try this again. And we're going to go ahead and just because the touching one didn't seem to want to work right, I'm going to go ahead and use a different way of doing that, which is I'm going to use a greater than math operator. I'm going to go to motion, go to the bottom and grab the Y position and say if the Y position is greater than 180, I believe. You might need to mess with this and how to exactly get it work, that it would stop it. Yep. That should work just fine. You can see it just blip out as it's hitting the edge of the screen. So that works just fine. My rocket ship can now shoot. And again, if I allow it to shoot too fast, it will basically kind of lock things up. So we're going to start working on that next. So I'm going to create the clone of myself. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to dump this. I am going to grab a forever loop and an if-then loop. And when the if-then is true, I want it to create a clone. The sensing that I want it to do is the spacebar pressed. Which again, this looks like it's exactly the same as what I had. However, what it allows me to do is create a sequence of it so I can't just spam click it and either lock the game up or just win too easily. So I'm going to then use my waits. So I'm going to have it wait until. I'm going to go to operators and grab the not block. And then I'm going to duplicate this. So this makes me let go of the key. Okay. The other thing that's just a little bitty trick is if I put a wait in after here, this can be a really small wait. Like I'm going to do 0.25 seconds. So it's going to wait for 1/4 of a second. And that just seems to smooth things out. So I know it kind of limits my ability, but you can see even though I'm clicking, it's not locking up. And again, as I said before, I can shoot while moving because of the way I've programmed this. Now, if you don't like that, if you're like, nah, I want to be able to shoot more frequently, you can do something like 0.1. I've even seen, as silly as it sounds, await 0 seconds helps keep things from locking up. So that's really effective as well. Now, right now, the laser doesn't do anything, and that's going to be something that we're going to program in when we get to programming our space invading robot in the next video.